One man, two completely different lifetimes.
That is the paradox we are looking at today.
Right, so today is Tuesday, February 24th, 2026. And if you check the news this morning, California Governor Gavin Newsom just dropped his new memoir.
Young man in a hurry.
Right, young man in a hurry. And usually politician memoirs are pretty predictable.
Yeah.
A lot of baby kissing, a lot of I watched 5 miles in the snow kind of stories.
Very safe.
Very safe. But reading through this one, it feels like a battleground.
It absolutely is a battleground because this isn't just a book about his policy record or the midterms or what he did with Prop 50. This is a fight over who he actually is.
The tale of two Gavins.
Exactly. Because when you look at the source material and the immediate online reaction today, you are seeing two completely contradictory versions of the man colliding in real time. We are reporting on this today not to take a side, but to just lay out the two narratives people are arguing over.
Right, because on one side you have the guy described in the book, this scrappy kid raised by a single mom, eating mac and cheese, struggling with severe dyslexia, and just fighting his way up from the absolute bottom.
And then on the other side, you have the Gavin described by his fiercest critics, and frankly, by 80 years of documented California history.
The power broker.
Right. The man who was jokingly, but fairly accurately, called the informally adopted son of the Getty Dynasty.
Yeah, the guy in that viral photo literally captioned, "Children of the rich."
That's the one. So that is the tension we are diving into. We want to look past the book tour sound bites to understand the actual architecture of power behind him.
Because looking toward the 2026 midterms and the 2028 horizon, the big question is whether a man with arguably the deepest elite connections in American politics can successfully sell a story of working-class struggle.
And whether that political machinery makes him invincible or if it's his biggest vulnerability.
Let's start with his pitch, because in the book, he goes really hard on this narrative of grit. He is clearly trying to smash that silver spoon perception.
He has to. He knows that is his biggest weakness with voters, so he leans heavily into the turbulence of his childhood. He writes about his parents separating when he was around 2 years old.
And he paints a picture of his father, William Newsom, that is very different from the political insider image.
Right. He calls his dad broken and broke after some failed political runs. He talks about living with his dad in Lake Tahoe for a bit, but mostly staying with his mom, Tessa.
And he says life with his mom was not glamorous at all. It was real financial stress.
He talks about moving constantly, sometimes even living with strangers to make ends meet. And he puts a huge emphasis on his dyslexia.
Yeah, he frames that not just as a school issue, but as this massive physiological hurdle he had to overcome with just sheer grind.
He wants you to know he didn't inherit his success, he ground it out.
And there is one moment in the book that is genuinely heavy. He writes about his mother's battle with breast cancer. She died at 55.
Yeah, that part is tough.
He describes sitting by her bedside as she planned her own assisted suicide, holding her hand, sobbing. It is a very raw, emotional beat.
It is, and it's important to say that those personal tragedies are real. Losing a parent leaves a mark on anyone.
For sure.
But here is where it gets highly controversial. While he highlights the Wonder Bread and mac and cheese days, a massive counter-narrative is blowing up online right now.
Oh, the backlash has been instant. Did you see his appearance on that NBA podcast, All the Smoke?
I did, and polarizing is probably the polite word for it.
Critics absolutely went to town. You had commentators like Jennifer Say writing this really scathing piece. She basically accused him of adopting a fake accent.
She called it cultural appropriation.
Right. Arguing he was acting like basketball saved him from the tough streets. In the interview, he literally says, Wonder Bread and mac and cheese, that's how I grew up, bro.
And then he talks about bouncing a basketball against the wall until it frayed. The criticism online is entirely about authenticity. People are accusing him of code switching.
It's that feeling of, come on, you weren't exactly playing stickball in the alley. It reminds me of when politicians suddenly get a southern drawl when they campaign in the South.
Exactly. But this is even more specific because he is actively trying to erase his privilege. Which brings us to the visual evidence his critics are using against him today.
Photo.
If you've opened any social media app today, you have seen the 1991 San Francisco Chronicle photo.
With the headline, Children of the Rich.
You literally cannot make that up. It shows a 24-year-old Gavin posing with the Getty heirs. They all look very glossy, very comfortable.
It is a brutal contrast to the mac and cheese story.
Critics are pointing at it saying, you can't claim to be a scrappy street kid when at 24 you were a business co-owner funded by oil money posing for the society pages.
And this is all getting fueled by these online comparisons to Vice President J.D. Vance. The memes are everywhere.
The internet never sleeps. The whole Chad Newsom versus Ched Vance debate.
Truly. But beneath the memes, there is a real political argument happening. People on the right are juxtaposing Vance's hillbilly elegy, Marine Corps, working-class background against Newsom's high society photos.
It is classic class warfare optics. The bootstrap narrative versus the born on third base narrative.
Yeah.
And the reason the book is titled Young Man in a Hurry is because he is trying to outrun that exact image.
But to understand if he actually can outrun it, we have to look at where he really came from. Not the dyslexia struggles, but the deep history, the geriatric quartet.
Yes, this is the crucial context the memoir kind of glides right over. You can't understand him without understanding the four families of San Francisco.
The Browns, the Newsoms, the Pelosi's, and the Gettys. It sounds like a mob movie.
It operates a bit like a political machine that has effectively run California for 80 years.
80 years. Okay, so take us back to Generation 1. The grandfathers.
We are talking 1930s and 40s. It starts with an alliance between Pat Brown, who is Jerry Brown's father, and William Newsom, Gavin's grandfather. In 1943, William Newsom runs the campaign that helps Pat Brown become the San Francisco district attorney. They were incredibly tight allies.
And allies reward each other.
Right. Which leads to the Squaw Valley deal. Pat Brown eventually becomes governor, and his administration is developing Squaw Valley for the 1960 Winter Olympics. And guess who gets the concession to run the facilities?
Let me guess. Not a random lottery winner.
It was William Newsom and his business partner, John Pelosi.
Wait, John Pelosi? As in?
Nancy Pelosi's brother-in-law.
Of course.
The families are totally tangled up. Nancy Pelosi's brother-in-law was married to Gavin's aunt. So technically for a while, Nancy Pelosi was his aunt by marriage.
That is incredibly insular.
Yeah.
But the Squaw Valley deal actually caused a huge rift, didn't it?
It did. Money complicates everything. In 1966, William Newsom wanted to expand the resort. But the state, run by his friend Pat Brown, said no.
And Newsom was furious.
Records describe him as embittered. He actually threatened to hurt the governor politically while Pat Brown was running for re-election.
Running against Ronald Reagan. So the grandfather threatens the governor, and the governor loses to Reagan. That changes history.
It really does. But then Generation 2 realizes fighting is bad for business. Jerry Brown, Pat's son, becomes governor in 1974 and patches things up by appointing Gavin's father to a judgeship.
So now we have Judge Newsom. But from the sources, Judge Newsom wasn't just sitting in a courtroom. This is the part that really complicates the broke dad narrative.
Because he was the conciliar for the Getty oil family, one of the richest families in human history. He wasn't just their lawyer, he was their fixer.
The guy they called when things went incredibly wrong, like the kidnapping.
The movie moment. In 1973, J. Paul Getty's grandson was kidnapped in Italy. A massive global news story. The kidnappers actually cut off the boy's ear and mailed it to a newspaper.
Such a horrific story. And who did the family trust to fix it?
Gavin's father. William Newsom personally delivered the $3 million ransom to the kidnappers in southern Italy.
In a briefcase.
Exactly. You do not ask a casual acquaintance to hand-deliver cash to the mafia. You ask someone deep inside the inner circle. Wow. He later managed the trust for Gordon Getty. He even helped change state laws so Gordon could claim his share of the fortune.
So when the book says his dad was broke after some failed campaigns,
Natural capital was infinite?
his Rolodex was worth billions. And that transfers directly to Generation 3, to Gavin.
Right. Sources describe Gavin as being informally adopted by the Gettys after his parents divorced. He traveled internationally with them, went on safaris, immersed in private jets and high culture.
Which makes the Wonder Bread comment feel, well, selective.
And when he started his first business, it wasn't a bank loan that launched him.
It was Plumpjack.
The Getty Trust provided the seed money for Plumpjack, the wine and restaurant business he started with Billy Getty, his childhood friend. That business made him a millionaire and launched his political career.
So just to recap this architecture, his grandfather helped the governor. The governor's son made his dad a judge. His dad managed the Getty fortune. The Getty fortune funded Gavin's business. And then Gavin takes Jerry Brown's seat as governor.
It is a perfect dynasty. So when critics attack the grit narrative, they are pointing at this multi-generational machine and asking, is it honest to pretend you are an outsider when you are the ultimate insider?
It is a totally fair question based on the history, but to be fair to him, he does have a history of going rogue. He hasn't always just taken orders from the machine.
No, he has a definite rebellious streak. The biggest example is 2004.
Same-sex marriage in San Francisco.
Exactly. You have to remember the context. George W. Bush had just given a State of the Union criticizing activist judges on marriage. The country was in a very different place. But Newsom, as the new mayor, authorized marriage licenses for same-sex couples at City Hall.
I remember the footage of that. Lines wrapping around the block in the rain, people crying. But the political establishment was terrified.
They were furious. Dianne Feinstein, part of that exact same San Francisco quartet, was angry. She thought it was political suicide. National Democrats were panicking.
He wasn't even invited to speak at the DNC in Boston that year.
Right. And there's that story he tells about Barack Obama. Newsom writes about being at a party with Obama, who was just a state senator then, and Newsom was explicitly told no photos with Obama.
He was considered too toxic.
Too radical for a rising star like Obama to be seen with.
Which is wild now. But you have to give him credit. He risked his political capital on a civil rights issue way before it was safe.
He did. It shows he is willing to jam the gears of the machine if he believes in something. Or, if you look at it cynically, he just saw where the parade was going before anyone else.
Yeah, he balances that risk-taker persona with the establishment heir reality. And the book also tackles his personal scandals head-on.
It is a clear strategy to clear the decks before 2028. He brings up his affair with Ruby Rippy Tork, the wife of his deputy chief of staff.
He calls it the worst betrayal of his life.
Owning it early means it can't be used as a surprise attack later.
He also talks about his ex-wife, Kimberly Guilfoyle, which is just bizarre to think about now since she is engaged to Donald Trump Jr.
The degrees of separation in politics are basically zero. But he also addresses that infamous Harper's Bazaar photo spread, the one where they were dubbed the new Kennedys, lying on a rug in evening wear.
He says he cringes at it now.
He does. But again, that photo is exactly what critics use to prove the Gilded narrative. It screams royalty, just like the anecdote he shares about the tech titans.
Oh, the iPhone story.
Yeah, he casually mentions standing at a party with Google founders Sergey Brin and Larry Page when Steve Jobs walks up and pulls out a prototype iPhone, a block of glass, before the public ever saw it.
Just casually hanging out with the founders of Google and Apple. He is a cool story, but it does not scream mac and cheese.
It screams VIT room. It reinforces that he has always been in the room where it happens.
So bringing this to right now, February 2026, the book is out. He is doing the media blitz. He officially says he is not running for president. He says he's focused on Prop 50 and the midterms.
The oldest game in politics.
Right. But his actions say something else.
You don't release a memoir retelling your life story for a national audience unless you are looking at a national stage. He is framing his current fights against Trumpism and talking about rigged elections with the DOJ monitors in California.
He is setting himself up as the counterfighter. But there is a huge stumbling block here, which is the accessibility problem. We just saw this flare up with Nicki Minaj.
The Georgia speech, that was really uncomfortable.
Very. He was speaking to a predominantly black audience in Georgia, trying to relate to them about low test scores. And he said, "I'm just like you."
And Nicki Minaj blasted him on X for it.
She accused him of slow-talking the audience as if they were stupid or couldn't read.
She basically said, "Don't patronize us." And that highlights the core friction of this entire deep dive.
Can a man with that level of privilege authentically connect with working class or minority communities without it looking like a performance?
When he says, "I'm just like you," do they see a guy who struggled? Or do they see the guy from the Children of the Rich photo trying to pander?
That is the big question. So what should you take away from all this?
I think the takeaway is that he is attempting a very difficult maneuver, reframing his origin from dynastic heir to scrappy fighter. The book is his opening argument, but in an era of populism, his deep entanglement with the California elite is a massive target for his opponents.
It is like trying to sand down a diamond to make it look like a regular rock.
That is exactly it.
But let me leave you with a final thought on that. We spent all this time analyzing whether his connection to the geriatric quartet is a fatal flaw. We treat the machine like baggage.
Right.
But in a modern presidential campaign, which costs billions and requires massive institutional protection, is that machinery actually a flaw?
Or is it the only kind of armor that survives the gauntlet?
Exactly. If you are going up against a populist juggernaut, Maybe you need the 4 families behind you. Maybe the bug is actually a feature.
Authenticity might win hearts, but machinery wins elections. And he has the best machinery money can buy.
Something to mull over. So do yourself a favor, look up that 1991 Children of the Rich photo, read the mac and cheese passage in his new book, and decide for yourself which Gavin is the real one. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Catch you next time.